The representatives for the emerging regions might be okay. Hello and welcome to Vision Denial and World Watch. My name is Sam, and if you're new here, I watch every single playoff game for all the competing regions at Worlds, Asterisk for whatever it's called in EMEA finals. That said, yes, including the one that you're thinking about. Today, many regions are still finishing up. The LCK has finished theirs. The LCS has finished theirs. The LLA has finished theirs. The ones who have not finished their playoff series so far, the PCS, the VCS, the LEC, CBLOL. I think that's it. Those are the ones. Yeah. And the LJL is also done. With the LPL. A lot of regions, most of the regions so far have finished their playoff series and have come to a particular conclusion where I do not think still that the LPL and LCK top two teams are, can be challenged for the moment in time being, that what is known as the minor regions or the emerging regions will have an easier time actually competing. So let's run down with that then. Oh, but before we do, if ever you're curious about the different, we're going to look through August 24th through August 26th, all of those particular best of fives that happened through that time. Yes, I know I am not live. I will be by next week. I watch them and then I put them on TikTok. The link will be down below. Also, if you're curious about the World's Qualifying Series, I will also keep the link down below. We talked about that last week. Without further ado, let's look at this week's series of videos, or series of reviews. And we're back with Korea's LCK's regional qualifier, so the lowest bracket of the playoff. We got ourselves Hanwha Esports versus KT Rolsters, and congratulations to KT on being the 13th team to qualify for Worlds. Although it's not quite like they tried all that hard also, I've already mentioned that KT has shown to be Worlds caliber in the previous series, and it was just a matter of sticking to the landing. I don't think this series was quite really sticking to the landing. Mostly because Hanwha Life wasn't much there. They showed up, played one game where the advantages was practically handed to them, and instead died for the rest of the series. KT showed us some solid vision coordination, some regular coordination, map pressure, macro choices, but everything else was just, we have to just kind of assume based on the previous series that it's going to stay up to par. Hanwha Life, if they want to qualify for Worlds, need to do something so drastically different from what this was. Because otherwise, this is a very sad team, and I would refuse to even acknowledge as even attempting to go to Worlds. They were just kind of here. My MVP of the series is BDD, who had the most proactive and consistent play out of KT. And we're back with Korea's LCK's regional qualifiers, the lower brackets, so the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the brackets that we got going. We got DRX versus Dplus KIA. I'm getting a little tired of these teams coming in and just not showing up to play. Now, Dplus had a solid coordination, macro sense, some safe play in general, questionable vision consistency, but always knew how to keep a lead. DRX on their end were so good at vision that it's baffling they didn't find anything to do with it. There's a large concern for how passive both teams were being. On the one hand, DRX looked like they had given up from the start, just straight up. On the other, Dplus played very safe in situations where the leads were still so large they could force it with a safe margin of error. When looking into the future for the next regional qualifier, you could make the assumption that Dplus are more proactive than Hanwha Life, so it's a likely victory. But to me, the issue comes from the fact that Hanwha Life was unsure of how to face KT, but DRX knew how to face Dplus and did nothing still. It's honestly a toss-up, as these bottom three teams show nothing of significance to scream, yes, there, world's caliber team. My MVP of the series is Showmaker, who did so much on his own to set up the team for success. And we're back with Southeast Asia's PCS upper bracket semifinals. We got ourselves Megabank Beyond Gaming versus PSG, or Paris Saint-Germain Talons. And congrats to the Talons on being the 14th team to qualify for Worlds. Quite honestly, it won't surprise me if Beyond Gaming wind up back to the finals, also having qualified and ready for revenge. Both teams have some decent approaches to vision, ballooning their leads excellently, and having solid control over the pace of the game. Coordination is fairly solid with some hiccups here and there, and when either team is behind, it's rare to just see them give up completely. They're either contesting or trading to nullify leads nicely. For the most part, sometimes they're trying to trade in ways that's, I was genuinely impressed by their play, except for the adaptation in between games. The Talons tend to stick to their play style that they have, while Beyond struggle to pinpoint the sore points of the series in general from game to game. But if the drafting is the worst aspect these teams have to fix, I have little concerns as they head to Worlds. My MVP of the series is Junja for how he enables the win conditions of his team early in. And we're back with Vietnam's VCS's lower bracket round 2. We got ourselves CERBERUS versus Team Wales. And after seeing how Team Wales won this series, and it's clear to me how they also lost the last one, there isn't so much a lack of proactivity or adaptation, and more that they play very standard and by the book. Now, CERBERUS was incredibly creative, challenged them in many ways, arguably better in aspects of vision and neutral setup, but the coordination and fundamentals and how to keep up in gold was just much better from Team Wales. So any opponent that doesn't know how or understand how to approach the scenario is going to struggle immensely against a team that is very sturdy and consistent in terms of the standard play. Now, Team Wales on their part regularly get caught off guard when a team seems to play slightly off or faster than them. I honestly can't say I have confidence in them qualifying for Worlds, let alone being Worlds caliber, unless I see a much better approach to either map control and macro choices, as well as how they balloon leads. It has to be done more consistently. My MVP for this series is Sparta, who, for honestly the influence he held in the map and in team fights, as well as how he nullified Poon. And we're back with Korea's LCK's round 2 of the regionals. We've got ourselves Hanwha Life Esports versus Dplus KIA. And congrats to Dplus on being the 15th team to qualify for Worlds. Now, Hanwha Life had a lot going for them. Some solid vision, great understanding of side lane management, understanding of map pressure. But when it came down to ballooning leads, strong coordination, or even adaptation, they could not cut it whatsoever. Dplus, for their part, have incredible coordination, understanding of their win conditions nicely, and surprisingly close out some games fantastically, although not consistent in that matter. And with a solid early game as per usual. I will say, though, the issues post-early game still apply. There is still a struggle when it comes to ballooning leads past the early game, letting much of the map go to the wayside, over-focusing on their win conditions solely, leaving them sometimes in a weird, awkward spot where their opponents could get their own win conditions. It's a good thing they were facing Hanwha Life. Overall, the drastic improvement I saw from Dplus is a solid sign to come as they head to Worlds, and I hope the remainder of their issues we've seen during the playoffs and regionals can be shored up before then. But for now, they're so close to being a Worlds caliber team. I can taste it. My MVP of the series is Showmaker, who created so much space and shut down Zeka to a ridiculous degree. And we're back with Southeast Asia's PCS lower bracket round 3. We got ourselves Frank Esports versus CTBC Flying Oysters. And quite honestly, either team moving forward would likely lead to the same result against Beyond Gaming. Both teams hold very poor map control, very limited vision play, only excelling in extreme leads. questionable coordination, even more questionable priorities in regards to their own win conditions, and an over-reliance on neutral objectives that dictate the actual pace of the game. Frank was a little bit more creative and at least drafted towards this kind of play. Like, they had properly drafted for this kind of like over-reliance on neutral objectives, and the Flying Oysters was better at ballooning leads and once a significant one was created, but quite honestly, neither understood how to close out games outside of a fight for neutral control. And if I had to put a bet on it, neither would be able to handle beyond gaming at the next round. Pretty sure that would be the case. And especially neither are world's caliber. With such reliance on neutrals to get the game going, any team who would fully kill off the map before having the chance to set up would just be... it would be a hard time watching them play against them, which is many teams who have qualified for Worlds. My MVP for the series is Shun from the performance he pulled in every skirmish. And we're back with Vietnam's VCS lower bracket round 2. We got ourselves Team Flash versus Saigon Buffaloes. And boy, was this a messy series. From the start, both teams at the mid to late game understand fully how to balloon leads and close out games, for the most part. It mostly comes down to the early game where things just kind of get a little bit chaotic. The priorities are all over the place, coordination is messy, and frankly, some of the micro choices are also pretty weird. But from the vision play to the neutral setups and the attention to the side lanes, you can see that both sides understand their win conditions mostly. Team Flash is better at adapting from game to game, while Saigon Buffaloes holding a wider champion pool are more willing to experiment. And that's nice and all, but the underpinning issue is just how rough actually watching them execute their draft is. Neither team is world's caliber, and either going through likely holds the same result, which is chaotic mess that needs a little bit more refining to even be close to competing. My MVP of the series is Shogun for the consistency he held throughout. And we're back with EMEA's LEC lower bracket round 1. We got SK Gaming versus Team BDS. And quite honestly, SK did a lot of things right. Some solid vision, right ideas around map control, good adaptation from game to game, but between the inability to balloon leads, failing to recognize win conditions, weak neutral play, and very weak coordination, we wind up in a situation where BDS had to barely do anything more than just the bare minimum to get what they needed. BDS, for their part, concerned me on the pace they played out for all of these games, with very little ballooning and three games won via neutral objectives primarily. The early game leaves me a little concerned over how they'll approach any team who's even remotely faster and plays around neutrals just as well, if not better. They use Barons very well to gain map controls and answer plays in a very controlled fashion, but I don't think it's enough to consider them world's caliber. My MVP for this series is Nuke, who created so much space and shaped the pace of all team fights. And we're back with Brazil's CBLOL lower bracket round 3. We've got ourselves INTZ versus Red Canids Klunga. Now, there's something super novel about the approach to map pressure being used similarly as neutral objectives from this region. I just kind of wish that it would be applied at all stages of the game and not just the early game. Now, INTZ showed us a limited champion pool and restricted gameplay approach, but that approach was very nicely refined with a decent vision, coordination, map pressure, and neutral setup. Just kind of otherwise, it would be a little bit all over the place. Now, Red Canids was more coordinated overall, had better in every particular sense of the phrase. We just find a level of over-aggression and eagerness that is easily exploitable. On top of it, both teams just lacked the awareness for macro play come mid to late game, rotating over and over again to the next largest neutral objectives for team fight after team fight, and not ever playing the map pressure. It's one thing to use the Baron to take down all outer turrets. It's another to use that map pressure to end the game or gain more afterwards. Neither are really world's caliber, and it would be hard for me to see Red Canids make the finals at all. My MVP for the series is Titan, who kept a huge impact in every single skirmish he was in. And we're back with Latin America's Grand Finals and a rematch. We got ourselves Estral Esports versus Movistar R7 or Rainbow 7. And congratulations to R7 on being the 16th team to qualify for Worlds. This is by far the most Worlds caliber team I've seen from the LLA. Firstly, Estral had some solid drafts and the right ideas around how to approach their adaptations game to game, but between the lack of proactivity, rush neutral setups, and vision that just struggled to pass the river, it was hard to see this go any other way. Meanwhile, Rainbow 7 would understand their drafts, continue proactive play at all stages, prioritize the win conditions properly, hold decent vision, solid coordination, and didn't struggle to close out games in some way, some of the ways at least the other teams from the LLA have shown. I have concerns about their overconfidence getting the best of them, but otherwise, we have a solid competitive team, at least of this particular caliber. Now it's just up to us to see how they hold up against the best. My MVP of the series is Adi, who played every early game near perfect to get his team the necessary first steps of victory. Well, those are pretty good. I do think that the quality overall has been slowly improving as time goes on, which is helpful. It's... To me, when I watch these and the qualities have gone up, I am left with a little bit of a concern regarding if they'll top what is currently the at least top 3 LPL teams, LNG, holy camoli, BLG, JDG, and LNG. Those 3 teams are monstrously good, or even the top 2 LCK teams with the Genji and T1 and a little bit KT Rolsters. Those 6 teams in general are mostly competing amongst each other in the sphere of like what is going on at Worlds. Outside of that, I take a look at usually what is the LEC, the LCS, and the PCS, usually being the 3 teams that just dumpster on the emerging regions of the VCS, CBLOL, LLA, and LJL. I don't think we're going to have quite a lopsided affair in this particular situation. A lot of these teams have gotten a lot better at closing out games, adapting between things, the better vision approaches. Coordination looks a lot better than they used to, and it is of my personal opinion that if not taken seriously, some of these teams are just going to lose out games to the lower regions, and it's going to be less of like an upset that's going to swing the results in a particular direction and more like a norm. But that's mostly from like early preliminaries. I haven't gone through the stats yet because it's not, the teams haven't completely finished, like the regions aren't all done yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if after looking through the stats and going into and going through like the nitty-gritty of it all, that expecting all of these emerging regions to just plainly and flat and just like outright lose every single game shouldn't be what we expect. I think that there's going to be a little bit more competitive than that. And that might be also like the results might be changed from that because of the new format that we're having, where it is very unlikely for a team to lose every single game. And if they do, not great. But we have weeks until that happens, and I still need to see what's going to happen within the last week-ish of games that happen for the playoffs, and then collect stats. So we'll see what that looks like, what that turns out to be, But for the moment, at least that's what I think. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Do you think that the emerging regions are actually like improving, where what used to be large gap between North America, Europe versus China and Korea, and then large gap of everybody else with the like Europe, North America, and Southeast Asia? But now that that second gap is closing in the same way that like I think that the spectrum of skill is like shrunk, like quite a bit over time, and in a way that we don't expect. Like it shrunk one direction, and there's still like a huge gap that exists, but it's shrinking in the other way. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Other than that, there's not much to really cover. No changes have happened, nothing drastic has happened. It's mostly smooth sailing, but we will see next week likely the before last installment of World Watch, or the last installment depending on the situation and schedule, before I start releasing the week or the individual team qualified videos, so to speak. With that, thank you again for everyone for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what your favorite series has been so far out of the ones that we've covered, the ones that you're looking forward to, anything and everything. Greatly appreciated down in the comments down below. And I appreciate every watch that comes through. You all have a wonderful day. Thank you. See you next time.